agents that a house is unlike any other asset somebody can purchase, right? If you think about investing in any other thing, investing usually is only monetary, right? So somebody buying stocks in the stock market, they're doing it to build some kind of financial wealth, right? Where they buy, a piece of rare art. It may be because they love that art, but primarily they see the monetary value of that thing. But a house is different. A house solves an immediate need, right? We all need housing security. We need a roof over our heads in order for us to thrive as humans. And most of your home buyers are probably buying a house for that reason, not necessarily because of the financial investment they're making. But we all benefit as homeowners. If you own a home, you really benefit from the financial well-being of owning that asset as a property. I bought my second house in 2016. I was my worst client as a real estate agent, right? And I forgot everything I ever taught my sellers and buyers about how to manage a market. But when I bought that house in Arlington, I was able to find a 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath house, older, not super updated, for $192,000. The house across the street from me last month was listed for $415 and sold for $460. We couldn't buy a house in our neighborhood today if we wanted to, right? But the upside to that is now I've got this thing that if I ever incur serious medical debt, or it comes time to send my kids maybe to college and I don't have enough cash to do that, I could leverage my house and refinance or get a home equity line of credit or something to help realize some of those financial goals. That's partly why you guys are serving the buyers that you serve, not just to give them an opportunity to have some security in housing, but some of the financial opportunity that presents, especially in a market like Texas where prices have been just like this for the past 2 years, right? So when Shabel's family moved to California, they couldn't buy a house. At first, they saved up enough cash to buy a home. And what they began doing is when a member of the community would immigrate to California, where their community was, they would rent a house out to that family until that family saved up enough money to buy that house from Shabel's family. Shabel's family always sold it back to that family at the same price his family paid for it. So they weren't really looking to make any kind of huge profit margin on the sale of the home. They made some money renting it, but really the goal was to support their community and help them realize home ownership. And that's kind of where the idea of Ribbon came from. Our mission statement is making home ownership achievable. And I don't know if y'all have heard much of the news lately. A report came out in DFW about the percentage of homes bought in 2021 by corporations.
Yes.
I don't know if y'all have had Houston data.
Yes.
In my county, it was 51% of all homes sold was to a corporation. What was it here in Harris County? A lot higher than we used to think, right? We used to think maybe 30%. And primarily, those corporations are targeting minority communities because those are the cheapest houses. And when 51% or 40% or whatever the number is going to a hedge fund and a corporation, that means one less family able to actually realize the American dream. And so we actually have, I believe, a responsibility to stand up against some of those corporations. Not to say they're evil per se, but I know they don't have the community's best interest at heart. They have their stockholders' best interest at heart, right? That's kind of their job. Our job is to support communities, support you guys in your local market to help your homeowners have a shot at actually buying an asset. So effectively, like Mel said, what Ribbon does is we take, sorry, I'm skipping some slides. We take your buyers through a process to effectively present them as if they were an institutional investor, right? We have a lot of corporate money that supports our company, but instead of using it to build these hedge funds, we're like using their money almost against them in some ways to help homeowners just buy a house. And what we do is effectively take Mel's pre-approval letter from Certainty and support your buyers, turning them into a cash buyer. We remove all contingencies past the option period. So the option period is our only contingency. And effectively what that allows your buyers to do is present a competitive offer that gets their foot in the door with sellers in a super hot market. Even as the market shifts, I don't know if y'all saw the report that came out from NAR, it was maybe a week or two ago. And the subject was a study that they had done over the last 5 years, analyzing the percentage of cash discount a cash buyer has under the highest offer that a seller received. So how much less of an offer could you make compared to the highest offer they got if you were presenting cash? We kind of, at least when I was doing new agent training, I always thought, and had heard maybe anecdotally, it was 4 to 5%. If you're a cash buyer, statistically, you can get 4 to 5% lower sales price because you're cash versus the highest FHA offer that a seller got. Now NAR has released, on average, cash buyers are getting an 11% discount compared to the highest offer that a seller has received, which tells me something. It tells me that sellers care a lot about sort of the certainty and the guarantee that a cash offer brings compared to a financed offer. I'm sure you guys have experienced this. You write an FHA offer for a buyer and you present it to a seller who has 15 offers on their property. What's
It goes to the
bottom of the pile, right? Ribbon's designed to basically help your buyers stand out and move to top of the pile. And so once we remove those contingencies and pass that option period, we're guaranteeing that closing to the seller and to the agents. So you may have a buyer who engages Ribbon, and this is a pretty rare circumstance. Hey, how's it going? But it's possible that a buyer decides the week before closing, they're not going to buy that house. The guarantee Ribbon makes is we will still buy it. You guys will become our agent. You'll still get buyer's agent commission. And we're promising that seller that the property is going to close. And that's really the value that Ribbon brings to the real estate market in competition like we have right now. We're promising the seller that this is going to close. And so when we can make that promise and effectively present an offer as cash, that does move your FHA buyers to the top of the pile. It allows them to stand out and present a more competitive contract that a seller's willing to consider. Now, I'm not going to talk much about white labeling, but we basically are an agent and lender facing company, not really a consumer facing company. So our goal is not to like generate a bunch of buyer leads. Sometimes buyers find our website, but to use our platform, they really have to go through you guys and through Mel to have access to the system. Because of that, if Brooks and Davis as an office wanted to take Ribbon's solutions and brand it to y'all's brand and present it as the Brooks and Davis power buying solution, come up with a sexier name than that. But you get what I'm saying, right? To your colors, to the way you present those logos on social media, all of that stuff, you have our permission to do that as agents or as an office, as a team. If you want to market this to Houston homebuyers as an exclusive resource, you can. When I look at DFW statistics, the most productive Ribbon office in DFW has written 26 accepted offers from 2020 until today. That's not a ton. And that office has like 600 agents in it. They've only written 26 deals, which tells me in Texas, Ribbon is not like a widely used commodity, right? And it means that you have an early adopter kind of opportunity if y'all want to present it as your own custom solution. All you're doing is using Ribbon's website and paperwork on the back end. So something to consider for sure.
If you don't mind if I chime in, like one of the things I like about the Ribbon program, if the Ribbon offer is up against an additional cash offer, like the cash offer can back out. They lose their option money and earnest money, of course, but if I'm a hedge fund or whatever, I really don't care.
Yeah, care about $500 earnest money.
Yeah. So with the Ribbon program, what you're explaining to the client is, as long as it passes the option period and as long as there's no structural damage to the home, Ribbon will buy the home. So it removes even that thought that a straight cash buyer can back out of the deal. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So that's one of the things that stood out to me when I did a lot of the training courses for Ribbon, that it can stack against another cash offer. Because that was one of the questions presented to me, was why would somebody accept a Ribbon back offer versus just a regular cash offer?
Yeah, so in Texas, when I speak with brokers, most of the time I hear them say, A buyer contractually has like 30 to 40 exits in the Trek 1 to 4 and all the addenda that you can attach that allows that buyer to retain their earnest money. So as a listing agent, if I ever got an offer with a 0-day option, I'm highly skeptical by nature, right? I'm looking through that contract, figuring out what other exits is this buyer trying to write in here. If you're a listing agent and you get a contract today that's financed and that agent has written 5% as an interest rate in that third-party financing addendum, interest rates are higher than 5% now, but we've written maybe a number like that for years in our third-party financing. That allows the buyer to terminate, because Mel probably right now can't get a 5%. You might be able to, but it's likely going to be 5.5 to 6. So if that agent wrote 5%, they may have snuck that by that listing agent, but they have that exit, right? Cash buyers, like Mel said, have exits, ribbon guarantees after we pass the option period. As long as we're legally allowed to purchase that house, right? As long as the HOA will allow us, as long as we can get clear title, we're going to buy it no matter what happens. Your buyers can jump on that crazy new rocket ship and move to Mars. You're still the agent getting the closing. Ribbon's going to buy it. And in that circumstance, which is rare, we would just turn around and sell it. And we'll basically work with any buyer you guys serve who's buying a primary residence. So the only buyers who can't leverage Ribbon are buyers who would be buying an investment property, a second home, or a vacation property. But it can be any loan type. Basically, anybody that Mel says he can get pre-approved, we're going to give them our thumbs up. But we don't help every single house. When you go to enter a property on Ribbon's website for valuation, this is going to pop up as a reminder. There's actually one on here that's a hard stop for Ribbon that I'll mention specific to Houston that we don't put on our national slides. Effectively, we can help a sales price between $100,000 and $1 million. The house needs to be on fewer than 4 acres of land. It needs to be built after 1960 or mechanically renovated. Legal won't let me change it. They put fully renovated on that slide. But really what we mean is if it was built before 1960, we want the major safety and mechanical systems to have been addressed at some point. The AC needed to have been replaced. The water heater needed to have been updated. Probably the plumbing and electrical needed some attention. The roof probably was redone at some point. It does not need to be turnkey cosmetically renovated. We don't care about the cosmetics. If it's older than 1960, we just want to see some of those safety systems addressed. And it does need to be in a major metropolitan market. So I'll show you guys the counties around Houston we currently serve. Our hard stops are no foreclosures or short sales, no mobile manufactured or modular homes. And in Houston specifically, right now, we do not have an exception for A and AE flood zones. So the listing right now in Houston has to be an X or an X500. We have those exemptions in Florida and Alabama. I'm confident we will get them for Houston. We just haven't been able to get that exemption from our investors yet. So just know if you're looking at a listing for your buyers in an A or AE flood zone, we can't serve that property just yet. Here are the counties in Houston we serve: Austin, Brazoria, Chamber, Fort Bend, Galveston, Harris, Liberty, Montgomery, and Waller. I'm a terrible Texan. Point to a couple of these counties on the map, but I imagine it's pretty much the wide bubble around Houston. That should be maybe 90 to 99% of the listings y'all are actually serving. You'd have to drive pretty far to get outside of this zone. You'd have to go north of Conroe, I think, really, before you're out of our zip code range. If you're ever curious about it, you can enter a property on our website. Our team will let you know, hey, that's in our market or that's outside of our market. We don't serve that area just yet. And the price for the program is really just dependent on which lane under our Ribbon Cash umbrella your buyer finds themselves. So we have two primary products that buyers leverage. I'm going to talk about those using some stories. We changed the pictures and the names, but the use cases are real. These are actual examples from our company's history. Obviously, the photos are different. But who we now call David was a first-time home buyer in Raleigh, North Carolina. That was our first market we launched. He was working with his agent, Tara. It was not as competitive as it is today, but still kind of competitive. They made a few offers and lost out. Tara had heard about Ribbon and said, hey, I think we should try this offer booster program. So Tara's first step was to sign up for an account. If you guys have not registered on Ribbon yet, I'll let you do that at the end of the presentation. It is always a free resource for agents to use. We actually have some cool tools on there for agents. As an agent myself, like, was one of the things I loved. Nobody ever talks about it in our trainings, but I've tried to write offers on zip forms and DocuSign on my phone, and it's a nightmare. I probably shouldn't be an agent like that, right? I should manage my time better and sit down at the computer. We can prepare traditional offers on our website using our mobile app, and it's so much easier than trying to use Loop or DocuSign. You don't have to pay for Ribbon's cash solutions to do that. You just write your standard offer. We have a multiple offer spreadsheet tool for listing agents that when I was a listing agent, it would take me about an hour sitting in front of a Google sheet, typing in all the terms of the contracts with my title company app, calculating estimated net proceeds for my sellers. Our website will allow you to upload those PDFs of offers you receive. It'll generate that multiple offer spreadsheet for you. You can just shoot it to your seller. It includes an estimated net proceeds on there. And then your seller can send it back through the website saying, I like this offer, or I have a question about this term. So maybe we'll save you an hour or two if you choose to leverage that resource. You're here to learn about how to help buyers win cash. So let's talk about these two programs. Tara's first step was adding David as a buyer, and then she took Mel's pre-approval letter and put it in our platform. This is a step that Mel can do as well. We actually kind of like it when the loan officer uploads the letter because we're going to ask Mel some contextual questions about how he generated that approval that you probably don't know. He needs to tell us how he verified credit and assets and income. We're going to ask him about any underwriting red flags or processing red flags that they've seen on the file. And when he does that, that allows us to generate what we call buying power a little more quickly. Buying power is just whatever budget Mel has put for your buyers on that pre-approval letter, we're going to authorize our cash for that same amount. So in this example, David's letter said a $300,000 sales price. We're going to allow David to go shop for up to a $300,000 sales price on a house, if that makes sense. The second step was for Tara to add a property into our website for valuation. Mel can also do this step. Depends on how generous he's feeling on the day. But if you send him your properties ahead of time, like your buyers are going to go see some houses tomorrow, you can shoot those over to Mel. If he's sitting at his computer, he might be able to do that. You can also pop into the platform and upload them. Within 24 hours of doing that, our valuations team are going to crank out some numbers for you guys to use for cash for that offer. Our valuations team are former licensed appraisers. Do y'all call it HAR or HAR here? HAR. Depends on who you talk to, I guess.
Don't say hard, don't say hard. Say HAR.
Okay, we'll play by the rules. So they're going to dig into HAR just like y'all would look at sales comps, pending and active inventory, average days on market, everything like y'all as agents or appraisers might do. And they're going to crank out two values for you. The first one is what we call our ribbon value. That's really like the base value based on sales comps, right? So this house down the street that was pretty similar sold for 300. We're going to put a ribbon value of 300 on it. That seems like a slam dunk sales price based on what the comps say. But then we're going to offer a max ribbon value. And that's really like, we can't support this number by comps, but we understand it's a competitive market and your buyer probably needs to offer higher than what the comps may say to win. And so we're going to give you both of those numbers, effectively allowing you to pick where in that range or below it your buyer wants to use. We are pretty much capped at the max ribbon value, but anything below that your buyers can choose to offer. Now, the reason there are two numbers, people would sometimes, why don't you just give us one number? We used to. We started now raising our max ribbon values to help more buyers in competitive markets. The difference really comes in how we do appraisal protection. At or below the ribbon value, we have appraisal protection free with our program. So your buyers are going to pay the service fee to use our program, but if they offer at or below that ribbon value, if there's an appraisal shortage, ribbon eats that difference, not your buyer. So you don't attach that lenders or right to terminate due to lender's appraisal dividend that we've been using for a few years now, because ribbon's going to cover that appraisal shortage. We take a loss on several properties every month to cover appraisal gaps for buyers. If your buyer needs to offer above the ribbon value and up to the max ribbon value, it might incur an additional fee, almost like a gap insurance policy, to cover that extra appraisal shortage. I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but I just wanted to explain why there are two numbers there. These figures are not necessarily representative of your experience. I have seen these values swing as wide as a list price of 330, ribbon value of 360, max ribbon value of 395. I have seen them be as narrow as a list price of 600, ribbon value of 595, max ribbon value of 602. It totally depends on where the listing agent priced that house, what the comps say. But we will give you that information on the front end. So before you go to prepare an offer, you have all the data, you can present it to your buyer, consult with them, and see if they want to move forward. We do encourage you to use our website to write your ribbon cash offer. We have the trick 1 to 4 embedded in our platform. When you go to do that, it's going to ask you like, what's the sales price? What's the close date, option period, all of that. And it's going to throw all of that data into that 1 to 4 document for you. The reason I recommend using our website as an agent instead of like using .loop or ZipForms DocuSign, the device that attaches ribbon to the contract, the ribbon offer addendum, is prepared automatically when you do it in our website. If you did it in your regular software, you would just have to know what numbers go where in those blanks. It's just more information that you have to be responsible for. I encourage y'all preparing it in our website, and then you can upload the seller's disclosure to get signed through our website as well. Any other addenda you need to attach, you can send it for signature through Ribbon's website, and then you get that PDF back that's like signed and initialed by your buyers. Then upload it to Back Agent or whatever you guys use, your .loop or DocuSign platform for compliance. Does that make sense? All along this process, you do have a Ribbon advisor who's going to help you answer questions about the program, potentially explain it to your buyer, but crucially, we need to communicate with that listing agent. Because Ribbon is not a widely known resource in Texas right now, the most pissed off calls I get are listing agents who are like, wait a minute, I thought this was cash. Why is Mel involved with Certainty Loans doing a mortgage? We need to explain to that listing agent, we're presenting it as cash because the deal is not contingent upon the buyer getting a loan or the appraisal, or even if they have to sell a house, it's not contingent on that. But the buyers are going to try to get their financing by closing. Don't be surprised when you hear about a showing appointment request through showing time, or sorry, appraisal appointment request through showing time. When you hear about Mel sending docs to the title company, that's goal 1, buyer getting their financing. If anything goes wrong, or for any reason they can't, Ribbon's going to step in and buy it as cash.
And if you don't mind, if I
jump
chime
in.
What's important with that is like working with somebody like me that will do a TBD underwrite. So we're going to send the loan to the underwriter before we even send it to Ribbon. Okay, so you want the loan to close before Ribbon has to buy the home because it incurs additional costs for the client. However, to the listing agent, he's saying, Corey, yes, you can. Like Corey is saying, the advantage to the seller is regardless of if the client gets the loan or not, it's still going to close. But we know the loan is going to close because it's already been underwritten. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Fewer obstacles or barriers. This is the plan we hope most buyers follow, right? We get into contract, everything's executed, listing agent understands it, their sellers love it. We get through the option period and guarantee that closing. Mel had a TBD approval. All he needed was an executed contract. So financing happens pretty quickly. We are able to close on closing day in your buyer's name. Your buyer takes full possession of that house with Mel funding the loan. Ribbon basically stood by like the rich uncle with our cash, ready to step in if we needed to. We didn't. We step out. We charge your buyers a 1% transaction fee for that service. We're basically charging them 1% of the sales price to waive all of their contingencies, present cash offer, be ready with our cash if we need to. But 75 to 80% of our deals are this, where the buyer shows up to closing with their loan done on closing day. We call this Ribbon Boost. Great for first-time home buyers, great for somebody who just needs a little bit of a competitive edge to get an offer accepted. The second model we have is a buy before you sell model. These were actual buyers down in Houston. We now call them Robert and Jane. Obviously, the pictures are different, but their objection to getting into the market at all is the true part of the story. They have 7 kids and 3 dogs. They both work full time. They did not want to list their house and live in it and show it and keep 10,000 things alive and look for the next house, right? It was just going to be too much. And so they decided we're just going to pause. Their agent, Bill, had heard about Ribbon when we launched in Houston, and he said, hey, you might be a good candidate for this buy before you sell program. He presented it to them during the buyer consultation. We do have a few materials. If y'all wanted to like use these in consults or open houses or whatever, we don't mind if you throw your information on these flyers. You can also copy and paste this information and customize it to like your buyer presentation or your listing presentation. And that way it doesn't look like ribbons branding and it doesn't have our name on it. But basically the same information. Robert and Jane liked the idea of being able to buy before you sell. Very similar process. We got a pre-approval letter from Mel that said, hey, once they sell their house, I'll be able to qualify them for a loan. We just need the contract. We need their existing listing to sell. We're going to check and make sure they are likely to sell that house within our rental period, 6 months long, up to prorated to the day. But as long as you as the listing agent say, here's the house I'm going to list it, here's what I think we're going to list it for, and we look it up at the data and decide days on market is 90 days or fewer, house should be good to go to get under contract right away, we'll go ahead and put our cash behind your buyers to let them buy first. You find the house, write the offer, but in this instance, Ribbon's going to buy it on closing day with our cash. So it is a straight cash deal. We enter our mandatory option period again. By the way, sometimes this is where agents throw darts at me. Our mandatory option period in Texas is 7 days, which is a long time, especially in certain parts of Texas where they're used to like 2 to 3 day option periods, if that, right? The reason why a seller would accept a 7-day option period goes back to what we've already talked about. Ribbon doesn't have any exits beyond the 7 days, whereas a traditional buyer has 30 to 40 exits, right? The other thing your listing agents and sellers need to know when you present it is Ribbon doesn't negotiate the price during that 7-day window ever, no matter what. We're not an iBuyer. I was super excited. I think it was like 2015 or 16 when I got my first open door offer on a listing. It was full price. And I was like, heck yeah, full price cash. My sellers are gonna be thrilled. We signed that contract. 4 days later, we got a $46,000 price reduction amendment for repairs, right? That's the iBuyer model. They try to get sellers into a contract and then use that option period to negotiate the best possible deal they can. That is not Ribbon's goal. We want the seller to get the full value. We want to be transparent in the front. The only thing we're going to negotiate in this is because Ribbon's going to buy the home, we're going to become technically a landlord to your buyers until they're ready to repurchase. So we are going to use this option period to negotiate potential safety repairs. I'm highly skeptical, y'all. There are 2 types of foundations in Texas, especially North Texas, where all we have is sand. There's foundations that have been repaired, foundations that are about to be repaired. That's all there is, right? And I asked my Ribbon team, I was like, how picky are you guys on things like foundations? They said, we only want to see that major safety systems are intact. The most common things I see on these repair requests are adding smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors where it's required by code, because we're a landlord, and enclosing open electrical junction boxes in the attic. I don't know if you've ever seen that on an inspection report. Now, I have experienced in my career the spectrum of inspectors. Not all of them are created equally, sadly. I've had an inspector pull me aside at an inspection and say, Corey, this house is about to burn down. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, do you see this sticker on the panel? This sticker says Federal Pacific. Do you know what that means? That means the house is about to burst into flames. I'm like, are you kidding me? Now, if y'all don't know, Federal Pacific panels have sort of like a reputation in the industry of not being as reliable as like a GE electrical panel. They were widely used back in the day. My house has a Federal Pacific panel. My house has never burned down. It was built in the early 60s, you know. Electricians know that those panels have that reputation, but if they're cared for and the wiring is up to date and everything's good, there's really no cause for concern. So I asked Ribbon, I was like, how picky are you all on panels? Like, are you gonna balk if it's a Federal Pacific panel? They said, we don't care. As long as the electrical box is operating as intended and it doesn't look like there's a fire that's about to happen because a breaker's out of whack or something, we're good to go. So it should be a pretty low barrier to pass with repairs. We don't care who completes them. Most of the time, we're going to ask them to be done by closing, but it could be the buyers or the sellers. If it's the case of smoke detectors and monoxide detectors, they just go buy the pack from Home Depot, stick them up on the ceilings, take a picture, send us the receipt. We're good to go. That's really all we need. We buy it. We rent it immediately to your buyers, gives them the chance to move in. In Robert and Jane's case, then they stage their existing home, have the photography done, listed it. In this example, they got their first house closed and they were renting from Ribbon. They were ready with Mel's loan to repurchase from Ribbon on day 37. So they only paid for 37 days of rent. Any unused rent was credited towards their closing cost when we closed it. Rent is a cost covering device for Ribbon. We don't make any money on it. So the faster the rental period, the better. We will go as long as 6 months for your buyers. We call this Ribbon Reserve. Maybe 20 to 25% of our deals every month are this model, but it's really the buy more time or buy before you sell model. It costs 2% of the sales price. We're not going to charge your buyer 2 sets of closing costs in that example. So Ribbon's going to cover our closing costs when we close it, and then your buyer just brings their down payment and their closing costs when they repurchase. They always, no matter what, buy it back at either the original sales price, or if it appraised for less, we will reduce the sales price to the lower appraised value. We're never going to escalate the sales price. So some buyers in this market have Ribbon buy it. Let's say they bought it for 300. 6 months later, they're ready to repurchase. That appraisal probably is coming in a little higher in 6 months than it would today, right? House may be appreciated at 315 or 320. We're not going to raise that price to that appraised value. They're just walking in with instant equity in that house. We only recoup what we paid for that house. Our fee effectively in both of these scenarios, because we have closing costs on this one, effectively the fee that we get averages to about 1% of the sales price on our transactions. We present it up front, so everybody knows what they're getting into. We try to keep the cost as low as we can for home buyers to have this competitive advantage.
And just to chime in, like something that I would, I'm sorry, you got a question? Go ahead.
And he may have already answered this, but you mentioned buy before you sell. If they've already purchased a home and utilize it why would they buy back? I guess the buy back.
So Ribbon's buying it for them on that first closing. They're not closing on it. So it's not like 2 mortgages.
Okay.
Ribbon buys it and rents it to your buyer until they sell their existing house and can close on their new loan. Then they become the owner of that new purchase, basically. So that's why we call it a buyback. It's a repurchase because we closed in Ribbon's name, took title as Ribbon, and then we're going to pass that property to your buyer when they can take title with their loan funding.
Yeah.
Right. And they only
Good
pay the
question.
closing costs one time. And
Yeah.
they pay that fee to Ribbon one time
Yes.
at the end.
Okay, I was thinking about the seller. I was thinking about the seller buy back. I was like, wait a minute, buy back. But you're referring to the buyer.
Yeah, always right now, we only operate on the purchase side. We don't really have any say in, like, if you've got a listing that you're gonna take and that client is using Ribbon, we're only really working on the purchase side. As long as the home that they have to sell matches our criteria and it's not way out of whack, like the price is 100,000 above what we think it could sell for, that's really the only input we have on the home to sell. We're always focused on the house that they want to purchase, but giving them up to 6 months to get their existing house sold. Or in some cases, it's not a house to sell. Some they just relocated from another state. Mel maybe needs a month or 2 of income to show before he can qualify them, but they found the house they want to buy. Mel says, after 2 months of pay stubs, I'll be able to write their loan. I just can't do it today. That client may be a good Ribbon Reserve client. So that's why we call it like a buy more time model.
One of the things that I would like to add is it may be good, like, for example, 2 months ago, rates was in the 4s, now they're in the 6s, right? So rates can go up pretty quickly, and that can impact whether or not your clients qualify. So we have a program called Lock and Shop, which would be like perfect for this, where they would lock their interest rate. Let's say you're gonna put the house on the market, they're using this buyback program. You're gonna put the house on the market as soon as Ribbon buys the house. Okay, it's gonna sell in 30 to 45 days. Okay, we do the lock and shop, which they can lock their interest rate up to 90 days. And then they can, that way we know, we already had them pre-approved with the TBD underwrite. We got the interest rate locked in. Yeah, they're gonna pay a fee for that, but it's better than.
It's less than
Yeah,
the interest rate going up by
it's
1%.
less than the interest rate. It's maybe like a quarter that they're gonna pay for it.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, like they pay that fee to lock their interest rate so that in case, because what you don't want to happen is Ribbon buys a home, they don't qualify for the house.
Yeah,
Now you got paid. So, I mean, you'll be fine because
Yep.
when Ribbon buys, you're the buyer's agent on it. Okay, but we won't be paid. Not that it matters, but at the end of the day, like you want what's best for your client. You don't want the negative association with they didn't close, they did this program with you. You know what I mean? So
And
that's like a part of it.
We do work pretty hard to try to set clients up for success, right? It costs us money for a buyer not to buy back a house from us too. And so it's in everybody's best interest for the buyer to be able to repurchase, like Mel's saying. So on the front end, we are going to do some homework. We're going to depend on him to kind of tell us their financial situation. But we want to make sure it's highly, highly likely that they'll be able to repurchase every once in a while, and maybe 2 or 3 times a month out of our entire company across the country, a buyer is unable to repurchase. We don't like it. We will do everything we can to work toward repurchase for that buyer. In that event, all that happens is we've already collected the 2% fee on the front end anyway, so they lose that. They've paid rent for up to 6 months. We just ask at the end of that rental period, they vacate the property, the lease expires. So that's the worst possible financial outcome for your buyers. They've paid 2% and they've rented this house for 6 months. Now they have to go shop for a new house.
But I think like, to be
Well, they
fair,
can't go back to their house if they can't get financing.
no, their house has been sold. They sold their current house, right? They put it on. market.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a very rare
Yeah.
circumstance, thankfully. This is not a likely scenario with buyers. We-
Because you're gonna, in the beginning, the pre-screening before they get
Correct.
the house shopping, we're gonna have all those numbers.
So I would
Pretty
be sure to make sure that you guys have a clear idea of where the client is and whether or not the program is truly gonna work for them. Right? Because if it isn't gonna work, like Corey is saying, it's our job to make sure we're setting the clients up for, it makes the ribbon look bad. If we put somebody in this program that doesn't really qualify for it, they qualify on paper, but they don't really.
Right.
You know, and then it ends up being a debacle, and now it's like Mel Simmons is terrible,
Yeah.
Corey with ribbon is terrible, you're terrible, we sold our house and now we don't have. That is so unlikely to happen because of everything that we'll be doing on the front end. So that's why I was just mentioning, like, have them look into lock and shop. Because really, like, the people that I've been encouraging, because I've worked with ribbon, the people I've been encouraging, like, really like this program is people that does have, like, yes, we're gonna be doing like our FHA buyers and stuff like that, but make sure that they have that option money, make sure that they have the ribbon fee. If they have the cash, even though they may be a FHA, because FHA doesn't mean poor street credit. You know, it just, people have a bunch of reasons why they might be an FHA buyer.
Lower MIP and they're only gonna live in the house for 5 years because they're moving.
And some don't want to put all their money in.
Right.
Like, I got this chunk, but let's just go for paycheck.
Right, exactly. So, you know, like, when you have a client, if they have the ribbon fee, the option money, and they're very motivated to buy a house, that's who the program is for. Does that make sense?
That's right.
Yeah, so you want motivated buyers, people that have the capital to do this program effectively, and people that's gonna fit the credit profile. So I'll be able to help you guys know, like, yes, this is a great candidate. So my story with Ribbon, if you don't mind,
Go ahead.
I had a VA deal. VA is also tough to get accepted. Why? Because,
Stigma about no down payment.
yes, and
Yeah, lender required repairs.
yes, the VA appraisal and everything else, right? So we were using Ribbon. It is very simple. As he said, we got the client pre-underwritten with the TBD underwrite, put the client in there. They came back next day, actually, with the Ribbon offer, and they are currently looking for houses to put offers in. So it's to me, it could be a very nice benefit to help y'all stand out in this market where it's so competitive. They say that inventory is the lowest it's been in like 40 years. It's like at an all-time low inventory. You know, so like, how do you compete when 50% or 40% of all the houses are being bought with corporations? You play ball. You
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
And that's what this program allows you to do.
Yeah, it's gonna cost your buyers a little bit of money to use it for sure, right? 1 to 2% of the sales price. And that's not nothing for a lot of buyers. That's a meaningful amount of money. And so we do take seriously being able to set them up for success. But the flip side of that is this is a great tool for those buyers, like Mel mentioned, those FHA and VA buyers who it's going to cost them something, but it's going to cost them more to wait for the market to shift. They're going to pay way more for those houses in a year when the market softens than they would today. And so if they can financially manage that fee, it's going to set them up for success. And, you know, you can never guarantee a cash discount, and you'll never really know probably from that listing agent how high their offers are. But an 11% average cash discount below the highest offer that sellers receive nationwide, you might save your clients money even by using it, right? Obviously, that's not guaranteed, but it's possible that they don't pay as high as they would have otherwise paid if they just presented as VA or FHA.
And one last thing that I wanted to touch on was we're talking about clients that we're looking for. This is a great program for clients that's even in the 500, 600, 700,000 range, where there's still 10 offers on the house and they're still having to compete. You say, hey, look, you know, instead of competing on the offer, why don't you look into this ribbon? Yeah, they're gonna pay 1% on it, but some people don't got the patience to play the waiting game on the houses, or they need to move relatively quickly. And that's why ribbon goes up to $1 million. So this isn't just for, you know, the first time home buyer. This can be used for all of your clients that's struggling to purchase houses in this market.
Yeah, absolutely.
One more time, I could probably answer this as well. When do they pay that 1%?
That's a great question. We're going to ask your buyers to deposit 2% as earnest money at the start of the contract. So they never pay Ribbon directly. We ask them to make a 2% earnest money deposit, and then that covers Ribbon's total fee. Most of our buyers are using our 1% program. So at closing on the settlement statement, Ribbon takes a 1% fee through the title company, and then the other 1% they deposited credits towards their cash like normal. That's a great question. So they will need that 2% upfront. Now, we do have a couple of additional program offerings. I'm not going to go too deep into the weeds because they're pretty seldom used. First one's called Ribbon Rescue. We do maybe tens of these a month across the whole company. It's designed to help agents and buyers whose deals are falling apart and Ribbon was not engaged at the beginning. So imagine a scenario like you've got these buyers who are selling a house and the buyers of their house are selling that house. And it's just like this domino of contingencies all lined up. And one of those dominoes falls out of place. The sellers of the property your clients are buying may not want to extend the contract and wait for your buyers to get their house resold. Or let's say some issue comes up with financing and they'll need an extra 30 days, not his fault, but like maybe something happened with work or whatever. And those sellers say, we're not going to extend another 30 days. Ribbon can step in and buy that house for your clients. Think of it like an assignment of the contract to Ribbon. We will charge 3% for that service. We're adopting some terms we didn't help negotiate on the front end. This is really a pull the parachute. The clients tell you, do anything you can. We don't really care what it takes. This is the house we want to live in. Ribbon Rescue might be a good fit for them. If you have that, you can reach out to your account manager when you sign up for the platform. Like I said, we don't do very many of those, but we do offer it. We will work with new builders. The two things to know as an agent about new construction are, first, builders don't often put sales in HAR. And so you may need to work with that new home sales rep to get some comps. And then builders often don't love our paperwork. Some of them are fine with it, but some of them are like they're on that type builder contract. So we may just have to work with that builder to use their contracts to incorporate us on the deal. But it look the same, either the 1% or 2% model, depending on what your clients picked. I'm not going to get too deep into the woods on appraisal protection either, but I want to highlight effectively what it is. So I've already mentioned, if your buyers offer at or below the Ribbon value, that base value, we will cover any appraisal shortage, no extra cost to your buyers. They may pay 1%. We may pay 15 grand to cover that short appraisal. It only costs your buyer 1% for us to cover that. If they offer above the Ribbon value and up to the max value, they're going to engage Ribbon Cash Plus. I say they. You as the agent are going to have a screen pop up and it says your buyer is offering above the Ribbon value. What kind of appraisal coverage would they like? We give them 3 options. First one is they can pay now for what we call Ribbon Cash Plus, which is like gap insurance on a car. It's the best way for me to describe it. We're going to see what difference the contract is between the Ribbon value and the contract price. So using simple, I'm a super simple guy. In fact, if I had a dry erase pen, I would write on the board. Using my earlier example, let's pretend Ribbon value of 300, max Ribbon value of 310. It's a $10,000 gap. We've got to figure out how that $10,000 gap is covered if the appraisal comes in low. With Pay Now, they're going to pay 25% of that difference. So in that example, 25% of 10,000 is 2,500. That is like an insurance policy. It is non-refundable. It would go on top of their 2% earnest money deposit, but that would ensure that if that appraisal came in anywhere below 310, and there's no bottom limit to that, it could appraise at 200,000, Ribbon would cover that difference. In that example, it only costs your buyers $2,500 to have that appraisal coverage. But if it appraises at value, Ribbon keeps that $2,500. It is non-refundable. It is like the insurance policy, right? If you don't use it, you lose it. That's going to help cover appraisal shortages on other properties effectively. We are still covering the majority of it, right? We're basically asking your buyers to cover 25% of any gap. So a lot of clients who use it end up saving money. But let's say you've got a buyer who says, I don't want to jeopardize that, or they may not have the cash to do it. They can bring that extra gap at closing. Let's say they have a house that's selling. They don't want to gamble that insurance money, but they say, we'll get more than 10,000 equity. We sell this house. We'll cover that window if it comes in less than that. Ribbon would still always cover up to our Ribbon value. Or the third option is really for those buyers who don't have anything beyond their earnest money and down payment and closing costs, but they need to offer above the Ribbon value to make the most competitive offer. We will sign a deferred agreement with them that basically says if they sell the house or cash out refinance within 30 years, we've got a repayment structure we'll work out with them. It's not a lien. It's not a monthly payment, so it's not showing up on Mel's side as like extra debt to income. It is literally a triggering event. If they sell or cash out refi, we've got a repayment structure with Ribbon. So we present some options. Just know if you go to write an offer for a buyer and it's above our Ribbon value, you're going to have to get on the horn with them and say, hey, we can either pay for this insurance or you can pay for it later. What works better for you? A lot of our buyers stay at or below the Ribbon value anyway. And in that case, that never even comes up. You just got free appraisal protection. Any questions?
And then Ribbon value, the Ribbon value base it on comps,
Sales comps.
sales comp.
So it really is not going to be higher than other comparable sales. It's going to be at probably the house next door that sold.
Well, the concern wouldn't be higher, it would be lower for most people that's looking to buy something else. Their concern would be that you guys are saying, okay, this is what you have. You know, they want to go buy a $350,000 house, but you're saying, okay, you're only going to get probably about 280 or 90,000. This is what your home is comping.
That's a good question. So are you talking about the home that they want to buy where it's comping? It's possible it would come in that low, but there would have to be nothing in that neighborhood that sold above 290 for that to be the circumstance. Our Ribbon values are fairly competitive. And as agents, if you guys think there's any kind of data or justification for a higher value, send it to our evaluations team. They'll always consider extra data. It could be like a pending listing and you talk to that listing agent and they say, yeah, we're under contract above list price and it appraised. Well, that's helpful data for us to have. I would say easily 7 times out of 10, I see those valuations come up when an agent requests higher numbers. So give it a shot. There's no penalty to uploading properties to see where the Ribbon value, max Ribbon value are. A lot of buyers are winning offers, even at the Ribbon value.
Because at the end of the day, they won't make money if the offers wasn't competitive.
Yeah, if we're lowballing everything, nobody's ever gonna use it, right?
And have you had many cases where the home that they're wanting to buy is way more than the home that they're selling?
Well,
It
sure.
wouldn't even matter because as long as they're.
Yeah, as long as they can get
as long as
approved.
Yeah, as long as they.
Doesn't
they're just
impact
not gonna-
us.
Yes, they're just not gonna get any.
Yeah, they'll
I
take the
guess so.
equity out of that house and apply to their down payment like traditionally. And as long as they can sell it.
Because they're already, you're paying you your fee.
Exactly, just the fee. And as long as the house is gonna sell within, like, under contract within 90 days average, then we're cool. We just wanna make sure.
If it doesn't sell,
Well, if we see that on the front end, we're gonna reach out to you and say, we're not sure we can back these buyers because this house that you've put in that they're gonna have to sell, you've estimated the list price at 550, and the highest comps we're seeing are like 510. We're not sure we'll be able to help them and set them up for success.
so again, in the beginning,
We put the ball back in your court and say,
look, if you want to use
right,
our services, you're gonna need to lower this price.
now we don't control what you actually list for. We're only asking the estimated list price to make sure it's not outside of our thresholds. You may go in that month after they buy it and list it for 550. But then that clock is ticking for 6 months. And if you don't get it under contract at 550, your sellers will probably have to be more aggressive on their asking price to wrap it up so they don't lose the house Ribbon bought for them.
At the end of the day, like it's about having the right team that's gonna set your clients up for success. with the right lender, with the right ribbon partner. So you want to know, like, okay, they're pre-approved all the way. They have the money, the loan looks good. This client is a good, prospect for using ribbon. So like everything on the front, like I believe this program can run smoothly. It was running smoothly for my client being great clients. They have 50, 60,000 in the bank. The program's gonna work, So, you want to work with people that's very motivated, that have the funds to use the program. People that's real tight on debt to income ratio, or people that's barely squeaking by or don't have any money.
Yeah.
It may not be,
Okay,
you know what I mean? It
Gotcha.
may not be a
Yes.
good program for them,
yes.
I'm going to drop a link into the chat for everybody on Zoom. But I will put that QR code back up as well. So if you have not signed up for a Ribbon account yet, then you can scan the QR code, or oops, my mouse disappears when I go full screen. You can scan the QR code or hit that link that I dropped in the chat. This gives you access to Ribbon as the platform. As you sign up, you're going to get a Ribbon advisor assigned to you. Their goal is to reach out to you within 24 hours just to see if you have any questions about the program. And so there's never an obligation to use it. You can upload a buyer, you can upload properties for valuation. The only time we're going to get paid is if your buyer actually signs the contract and closes with Ribbon. And so it's never going to cost you as agents anything to use the platform. You could try it out and just see if the values come back where you need it to, and go from there.
So again, you said that we could just go in and just put a property in there and then it'll come back
Yes.
and give us the.
Correct.
amount.
Give us about 24 hours. It should happen a lot more quickly than that, but up to 24 hours. If you need an urgent valuation, like you've got a buyer and offers due tonight at 6 and it's 2 o'clock, you can call your Ribbon advisor and say, I've got an offer due at 6. Can we turn this around more quickly? And most of the time our valuations can get that cranked out real fast. They work by priority, not just order of the property received.
And I can upload the clients for you guys once we get the pre-approval. The TBD underwrite normally takes 5 to 7 business days. That's very streamlined. And then once that comes back, we're just clearing conditions and getting an appraisal.
And even if you generated a pre-approval before the TBD underwrite, we could still just use that pre-approval while you're doing the TBD underwrite as well.
Yes.
So you can have
And
those
that's for
things.
only under 300,000, 350, right, for the houses? They said it was 2 values when I took the class. Anything over 350 or something had to be that full pre-approval?
Well, everything needs to be pre-approved with assets, income, and credit verified in writing.
Right, of course. We always do that.
Always do that.
Right.
So if it's over 500 sales price or approval amount, we're going to ask you to re-verify that you've done that.
Right.
And that's all we
do the
need.
TBD.
So we don't need the full TBD. The TBD
Oh.
is instant buying power, where
Right.
you upload the buyer and we give it to you that. If you upload a pre-approval letter before you've done the TBD, it may take us a couple hours to process it, but we'll still give it the thumbs up.
Right.
So your buyers can do that simultaneously, or Mel can do the TBD, then we upload them to Ribbon and get that instant buying power.
I recommend the TBD up front, to be honest. They just go straight through underwriting. We know the loan was good. We just clear conditions and get an appraisal. We could probably even because if you do it the other way, it's gonna take 30 days to close. But if we do a TBD, we might be able to close in 15 days. If we do a TBD underwrite,
Yeah.
because the appraisal might take 10 days to come back. We have our, hopefully, 10 days or whenever the appraisal comes back, and then we'll go ahead and do our 3-day disclosures, get ready to close the loan. So it just will make things so much more smooth. Probably, I would say 15 to 20 days, we could probably close with a TBD underwrite.
What questions do you guys have? I don't know if that's a ton of information. Sorry, I talked your ears off. I'm gonna check chat. I didn't think I saw any questions there, but let me check and just see. Oh, look at that. You're on it. Shay is the host supreme.
Who does not have my contact information? I know.
I don't think I have.
Yes, I do.
He's gonna make your phone do weird things to get it on there.
All I gotta do is tap the back.
Well, thank you guys so much for letting me come hang. We can turn off the Zoom if everybody's good there
Okay.
and they have the information.
All right,
For those of
guys,
y'all
does
who are in
anyone
office,
have
I'm
any
assuming that-
questions for Mel and Corey before we
So
log
make some
off?
plates. I'll probably make a plate as well.
Did y'all have any questions for me on the loan side? I'll
I'm
just
quite
go to
sure.
your home screen.
Thanks, Talene.
All right, well, thank you all for joining today. We are going to conclude this meeting. And we're going to enjoy Papacitos. I don't know what you're eating at home, but we have Papacitos. Y'all have a good one and thank you for
Going through
joining.
the process is good. I'm gonna send Shay a follow-up email that has links to really short videos on our website that kind of go over a lot of the same information. But when you're sitting down and starting off for, you've slept since then, you may not remember everything